first question. Jens, first of all, thank you very much for this interview. Well, I thank you that you are interviewing me. It's a pleasure for me. Could you tell us when you started your own unique style in base making? Actually, I made my first two bases in the year 1995. I started until 1996. The first two bases have been finished. Yeah, so 96 I started, or I released my first two instruments. Actually, it was not a real release. I worked 2 years on these two basses, a four-string fretted and a four-string fretless bass. And when I finished the instruments, I was so into these two basses, I had absolutely no objective opinion. Is this a good instrument? Is it a bad instrument? So I got the phone number of the editor-in-chief of the German Guitar and Bass magazine, and I asked him if he can have a look, if he can check out these two basses, and if he can tell me his opinion. And he was first a little bit stressed and said on the phone, well, every day people show me their basses and I just have not the time. But then we talked a little bit more and he decided to let me show him the instruments. So I drove up to the middle of Germany and brought him my two instruments, and he was interested and he asked me, can you give me the two instruments for 3 to 4 weeks so I can check them out? And I was fine with this, and I gave him the instruments, and they came back maybe 2 or 3 weeks later. And there was a little letter in the case saying, oh yeah, great basses, thank you very much, something like that. And I think 2 months later, a friend called me and told me, hey, go to the train station, to the newspaper stand. There's the new Guitar and Bass magazine, and there's an article about your basses. And it was really funny because he did a serious review about the basses, and the article started with the words, there's a little guy, there's a young guy knocking on my door, and he wants to tell me that these are his first two basses he ever has made. And I don't believe him one word. So this was actually a real big compliment, because in reality these have been my first two basses. And yeah, so this was the start of all that. So 1996 I released the first instruments. Do you have a formal art education? I don't have a formal art education, and I'm very, very happy about it, because I spoke with a lot of artists in the last 20 years, and all of, or most of them, especially if they are successful in finding an own way, an own kind of art, they say it's when you're studying something, in this second your mind gets in a specific road, or my god, how should I say that? Well, anyways, I just don't answer the question like this. I want to answer it in a different way. Do you have a formal art education? No, I don't have one. And I never had any kind of education, but I'm a huge art fan. I love art. I love modern art. I am traveling a lot to international art fairs, and I visit galleries all around the world just to see what's coming up next. What is the future of art, of development, of cultural development? And I think unconsciously I put all this input I get into my instruments. Great. 7 minutes 18 seconds for the first question. I'm sorry for that. I try to hurry up. Okay, question number 2. Could you explain your approach to the design of the instruments? Actually, I do not have any classical designing approach. So I'm not sitting down and try to analyze the market, what the market needs, and how the design should look to hit the market or something like this. It's actually very simple. I just build what I have in mind. Most of my instruments, they are developing in my mind. Let's say it takes months or sometimes even a few years until I release a new model. I have all the time 3 to 5 new instruments in my mind, which I started to design, to develop, to put finishes on, to design the shapes, to put technical features like electronics and pickups in them. They are all developing actually in my brain, and actually when they are really finished, when I have a clear picture of the specific instrument in my mind, then I start to do the construction on paper or in PC. Then I do the technical drawings and all that stuff. But first, it really needs to be 100% finished in my brain, and this mostly takes a few months, but sometimes it takes maybe 2 or 3 years. Yeah. Question number 3. What about the process in the development of a new bass design? Where do you get all your design and paint scheme ideas from? This is also something. I never look for ideas. I never, yeah, it is just a development. It all comes from my inside, and sometimes it comes by accident. For example, what should I say? A few years ago, I was in London, and it was a really heavy rain, and I got some shelter in a fabric store, and this store was specialized in fabrics for furniture, and I was just hanging out in the store because of the heavy rain, and then I started to check out the fabrics, and I found some beautiful fabric, and I started to do the Blue Dragon guitar series, for example. So sometimes it comes by accident, but mostly it just develops. And yeah, at the moment I'm just experimenting with a new gold finish. It's a kind of a gold powder mixed into some lacquer. Yeah, so I wanted to cover an instrument with 24 karat gold, but with powder, which is somehow mixed into a lacquer or glue or however. Anyways, yeah, so I'm not sure if I answered your question. So yeah, the ideas I just get actually from my daily life, from every kind of inspiration. Yeah. Okay, number 4? What could you tell us about the tone of your instruments? What about woods and electronics? So with me, I don't actually have a specific Ritter tone or something like that. I was always building instruments with the tone I liked. For example, in the late 90s, I played in a fusion band, and I wanted to have a real clear bass sound with a lot of treble, very fast. I did a lot of tapping and stuff like that. So I had a totally hard, cold, glassy sound in mind. And a few years later, I played in a 60s ska music band, and I had a totally different tone I loved, which was extremely weak and muddy and numb and slow and stuff like this. So for me, or for my customers, actually, the advantage is that I experimented with really a lot of different tone woods. Actually, woods, I used woods or materials I was sure the instrument will not be able to sound, but I wanted to hear the sound of the instrument. Like I made an instrument out of plastics, out of balsa wood, which is so weak, but I wanted to hear how it sounds. And yeah, so the tones actually are defined by the customers who order instruments of mine. Generally, I would say my tone of the most of my instruments are extremely present. They are extremely versatile in general, the instruments, talking about basses, and they are very much in front of, yeah, how should I say, yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, the best is always to make your own picture of the specific sound of each instrument, because I really made a lot of instruments with totally different sounds. What about wood and electronics? I use also a lot of different woods. I love maples, I love mahoganies, I love ashes, I love alders. It always depends on yeah, my daily mood and the daily sound information, sound idea I have. The electronics I developed with Klaus Noll, some electronics which actually have no sound. You can change the sound, like adding bass and treble and all that stuff, of course. But for me, it's very important that you have no sound in electronics. And also, the pickups should have no sound, as less own sound as possible. Because the job of these two guys, the pickups and the electronics, is to transport the sound coming from the instrument, coming from the wood. And I think this is the most important part which develops the sound of the instrument. Of course, if we're talking about pickups like alembics, they have an extremely own sound, but that's not my philosophy. I want to design the sound with the wood and the construction details, the construction features of the wood. How does this question number 5? How does the type of finishes you uses on your basses affect the sound? This is a really interesting question, because in the string instrument making business, there is something like something going around like the thinner the finish, the better it is. So if you have a thick lacquer finish, for example, which is known as a cheap made finish, then the instrument is less quality. I think you know or understand what I mean. So I found out that well, the reason for this is the thinner the lacquer, the more freedom the wood has to vibrate. So let's say you have a bass and there's no lacquer on. So the wood is totally able to vibrate open. It has an open sound, a warm sound. And if you put a 2 mm thick lacquer on it, then it's very compressed. It cannot vibrate so much. And yeah, most people think this is bad, but I figured out that with this, let's say, cheap finishes, well, cheap is not the correct answer, the correct word for it. A lot of Asian companies, when they produce cheap instrument, they just put as much lacquer on it, sand one time, and that's it. But I found out if I have a customer who wants, for example, a real funky bass with a lot of punch and compression, I actually put an extremely thick lacquer on it because this compression of the body also helps a lot to get this compressed sound out of the instrument. This instrument would be really bad for somebody playing fretless jazz music or something like that. But for a guy who really wants to have a compressed funk sound, I prefer to have a real thick lacquer on it. So actually the type of finish I use on my instruments really affect the sound a lot. Of course, it depends on the sound the customer wants. If I put a really thick polyester lacquer, for example, on a, let's say, a fretless bass, and the customer wants to have a kind of an open upright sound, I do a bad job because that's the totally wrong finish I choose. Well, you know, hopefully what I mean. So, question number 6. Have you ever been tempted to go into mass production at a lower price point? Or maybe license your design? I have been asked 3 times from Asian companies. They wanted to get my or have my designs and do mass production. And I had one American company, and they even wanted to buy my whole company and go into mass production. Financially, this would be a really cool thing, but for me, it is my game would be over, and that's the most important. It's really nothing I do for money. I like to earn money with the job I do, with what I love, but I don't make this job to earn money. If I would like only to earn money, I definitely would change my job. And yeah, so I have been asked to do this mass production at a lower price point, but of course, I I refused because I just don't like the idea of mass production. um, yeah.